Hello, everyone. So before we start today's webinar recording, we want to take the time to officially announce the brand new Better AMS community. So this community is going to be a private space where we can all engage with each other, where we could do, quarterly Q&As, bring in other experts from other verticals, and help all of us stay up to date with everything brand new within Amazon and Amazon advertising. So if this is something you're interested in, please check the link in the description. Please apply. Let us know if you have any questions. And yeah, we are incredibly excited to offer a new way to provide value to all of our followers. So thank you all so much, and please enjoy today's webinar recording. See ya. All right. Well, I feel good kicking things off. We just hit 100 attendees. So today we are talking about Amazon advertising structure, research, and optimization. Now, before we get started, a few housekeeping things. So for those of you who don't know, I am CEO of Better AMS. We are a retail media advertising agency. We really specialize in driving an amazing experience for all of our clients. We are not a software. We are not a hands-off solution. We are someone who really wants to work with brands that we love, and we really want to make sure we're aligned and have great relationships with all those clients. On the flip side, we also want to drive amazing results. So we dig really deep on all of the platforms. We manage Amazon ads, Walmart Connect, Instacart advertising. I believe this year we will top out at $75 million in advertising spend managed. Why that's so exciting for us is because it allows us to test a lot of different strategies and get really good at educating the market on what's best for all of their brands. Now, for those who have followed us for a while, you probably know that Better AMS's number one focus is in the space is typically on content and education. So LinkedIn's a huge platform for us. We also push a lot of content on Facebook, YouTube. Well, one of the core focuses for us is to expand that content and do a much better job at connecting with our network. So for anyone who doesn't follow us on LinkedIn, highly recommend following our team there. This is my personal account. In the last 365 days, we were able to drive 2.3 million impressions. We really want to 10x that. We want to be the go-to source for all communication, education, content around retail media. So thank you all for helping be a part of that. All the shares, likes, comments mean more than you all will ever know. But that being said, we want to take this and do so much more. So our last webinar, for those who joined, someone threw out the idea of starting a community, and we are wanting to do more of that. So we are officially launching a Better AMS community. Now, what the purpose of this community is going to be for is allowing us to truly connect with the people that follow us. So we post a ton on LinkedIn and YouTube, and it's a lot of fun, but we typically can't provide direct and actionable advice and feedback for brands. This is going to allow us the opportunity to do that. So if anyone's interested in joining our community, please scan this QR code. I'll also be sharing a few other resources, which are going to have a link to this. So if you aren't able to get it right now, it's going to be publicly posted across all of our social across the next few weeks. So even if you don't think it makes sense for you right now, please share, comments, all of those things mean the world to us. Now, one thing I will say is it's not a 100% free community. Right now, we want to make sure we are really valuing feedback and connection. So this isn't going to be a Facebook group where everyone just posts questions and you get responses maybe once a week and it's being diluted by people pitching their services. Everyone who's followed us knows we truly value having a clean, neat community that empowers everyone. So that is our core focus here. We're going to be providing an opportunity for you to connect directly with Better AMS team, strictly focused on expertise. We're going to have quarterly Q&As. We're going to have access to a Slack channel. And again, the reason it's priced the way it is because I want my team to be able to hop in and provide actionable insights. We're also going to be having a lot of guest speakers on different topics. Very large brands are going to be able to come in and help out and speak to what's made them successful. So again, thank you all so much for this. And yeah, be looking forward to launch over the next 2 to 3 days because we're getting rolling on this, and it's gonna be a lot of learning in the beginning. So we are very excited. Now, one other thing that I'm going to throw out here before we get started. So we did build out a full downloadable PDF that I'm about to share with you all. And the purpose of this PDF is to give everyone more detailed content that follows along with everything I'm speaking to now. So if you go into the handout section in the right-hand corner of your Demio, you're going to see a PDF and it's called webinar content. And what that is every section that I cover, if I don't cover in enough detail for you or your team, you can go to this resource and you can find all of the links where we've posted content on YouTube or LinkedIn or Loom videos to basically give you a lot deeper education that we just couldn't fit into this webinar. So definitely check that out. Share it with everyone that you know. It's one of the most comprehensive resources we have of all Better AMS content so far. We also have a few of our amazing friends in the space, Joe Shellerud from Ad Advance, Elizabeth Green, all of them have some linked content there. So check out all of that as well. All right. Well, now we're getting into the actual fun part of this webinar. First topic we have is structure. So we're going to be talking about campaign structure, naming, reporting, and bulk uploads, and how all of this ties together. First, I want to ask a really quick poll. Who can navigate Ad Console in a way that is actionable? And let's see, posted that poll in the corner. Let me know your thoughts. We have seen a lot of different accounts, whether you have 20,000 SKUs or you've worked with a software like Quartile, which has pretty complex naming. Understanding how to navigate your ad console is one of the most important parts of a really good Amazon advertising strategy. And the reason being is if your account's absolutely messy, then you have to rely on a third-party provider to clean it up. Whether it's an agency or whether it's a software or a reporting, you're always having to rely on someone else, which is risky for your business. And it's also meaning you're always a few steps behind because Amazon almost always rolls out all of their new updates to advertising console before they give access to all the software providers. So campaign naming is the absolute foundation for a successful advertising account. Now, you can have terrible naming and still do incredibly well. If you're in a niche category or you have an amazing conversion rate, you can, get by with some of this. But if you want to have efficient management, amazing budget distribution, fantastic bid optimization, and clean reporting, you have to have amazing campaign naming. Now let's use Nature's Bounty as an example. Let's say we have multiple SKUs, multiple product line. We have 3 different magnesiums that are all niche. We have immune health, which is across D3 and zinc and all these different variables. How do you set up these campaigns in a way that is scalable? Well, first and foremost, nomenclature. That's the biggest priority. So this is actually the internal nomenclature we use. So if any other agencies have audited our accounts, I'm sure you know what BAMS looks like. And if you're a brand that's worked with us, you're going to see something similar. One of the first things we include when we're creating campaign names is the ASIN. The ASIN is needed for quick analysis of product performance. It's needed for searchability within advertising console and for improved reporting. So if we run a sponsor brand campaign, we will not include an ASIN, but across all of our campaign types, we provide an ASIN and or a SKU. So that way we can build out all of our reporting on the ASIN level. So Amazon doesn't give us great reporting around this within ad console. I mean, they've recently rolled out the product tab, which is amazing, but ASIN is the first thing that we want to include. Now, the second thing we include in all of our campaign naming is a product identifier. So unless you're a brand owner that is, recently launched, you need to have a product identifier in your campaign name so that way you can easily search for everything. So as you can see here, if this brand comes to me and says, hey, I need more support on magnesium, I can quickly type in magnesium and see all of my campaigns as well as build out my reporting for that. The next thing we put is internal categorization. So as you can see here, magnesium is under bone health. We're going to want to build this out so that way we can track everything that the brand wants to see. So let's say we have a brand come to us and they're like, how do we, separate performance for new product launches versus legacy products? Well, we'll build it out into a campaign name. Or what if we have bone health versus brain health? And that's how we view the business internally. We build that out within the campaign name. This allows us to, again, build custom reporting that can be as granular as ASIN level or as broad as the categorization that a brand needs to drive success. The last big thing that we put is ad type and targeting type. So you can build these within your search term reports within the columns. We like to put them so again, we can make quick decisions and really break out reporting. And with that, we typically layer in the strategy and the goal. So we need to know the strategy and the goal of every single campaign. The reason being, again, comes down to budget distribution. Being able to say, hey, I have $100,000. I want this percentage to go to this product, which then goes to rank versus profitability versus branded keywords, things like that. This again allows us to build out all of the foundation for everything we do at scale. This also allows us to use tools like bulk uploads to take a brand that has 20,000 ASINs and have all of the coverage taken care of within less than 2 days typically. Here's what this looks like in total. So we set up campaigns for rank, we set up campaigns for keyword research, we set up campaigns for brand coverage, we set up auto campaigns. This also expands into category targeting, product targeting. We have, 100 different keyword research techniques, which you'll be able to see in the handout in the upper right-hand corner. But all of this, again, allows us to distribute budget, which is the most important concept of everything we're talking about in this section. So advertising structure, how is our campaign naming influencing budget distribution? Well, you're going to see here. So here's the typical structure we see within an account. You have one campaign and multiple ad groups. This is what we see almost across the board. Now, this isn't a terrible strategy. I know a lot of people who've been in this space for 5 to 6 years run off this strategy, but there is one key flaw in running your campaigns like this, and it's that all budget decisions are at the campaign level. So as you can see here, if I have a $100 budget for this specific campaign, some of it's going to go to my 50% ACoS ad group, some of it's going to my 30%, some of it's going to my 20%. I have no control over that. Amazon's going to distribute my budget on how they see fit. So if you have multiple ad groups segmented by match type or by ASIN or by strategy, you have zero control over where that budget's going, which is a major weakness. How we recommend setting up your campaigns is having them individually segmented out and then segmented out by ad group. So as you can see here, when we have 3 campaigns with 3 separate ad groups, I can now optimize appropriately for profitability. I can say, hey, of that $100, I want to give $60 to my lowest ACoS campaign, but I only want to give $10 to my 50% ACoS campaign because I'm in the process of optimizing it. I'm lowering my bids. I'm figuring out my keywords. So I don't want to turn it off. I don't want to pause it, because there's important keywords in there, but I just don't want it to have the majority of my budget. This is the core fundamental reason for running single campaign, single ad group, single ASIN strategy. It's not as fun to launch a million campaigns, of course, and it's not as fun to scale, but it allows us to segment in a way that allows us to distribute budget efficiently. Now, let's say we've got profitability covered, but what if we want to optimize for strategy? Optimizing for strategy is next level Amazon advertising expertise. This is something that we focus the majority of our time and resources on at Better AMS. What that means is we create these segmented campaigns for strategic targeting. So we have some campaigns where our only goal is ranking, which means we're targeting our highest converting keywords in exact match and focusing on top of search. Those are typically not going to have a great ACoS because they're expensive. Those keywords are very expensive. But I still want it to have more of my budget because I know it's improving my top line sales and driving incremental revenue. So if I'm optimizing for strategy, I can say, hey, I only want to give $20 of my budget to branded keywords because they're typically going to convert regardless. And then I want to give $30 to my profitability focused campaigns, and then $50 to my ranking focused campaigns. This achieves the goal of seeing a more strategic budget distribution. Now, to point to one of the comments that we have here of, well, what do you do when you've achieved one of those strategies? Using this exact scenario, let's say I get ranked. I'm ranked number 1 or number 4. Do I archive the campaign? No, I wouldn't recommend it because you're probably not going to stay ranked on number 4. All you do is lower your budget. You can either lower the budget to $5, so you're not really spending a ton, or you can pause the campaign if you really feel like that's in your best interest. And then you can just move budgets around. So typically at Better AMS, we look at budget distribution at its core on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis for our enterprise brands. And then we create this segmentation based off our goals. Again, if top line sales growth is all that matters, I'm spending more on my ranking campaigns and my market share campaigns, and I'm going to spend less on my profitability focused campaigns. If we really see what this looks like scaled out, here are the typical core strategies we run per ASIN. This is more so for a brand that's ready to scale. If it's profitability focused, we'll do something a little bit different. But we say, hey, for sponsored products and sponsored brands, we want our profitability keywords, which we're going to run across both of them. We're going to talk about our rank and market share campaigns. We're going to have our branded coverage campaigns. We're going to have expansion campaigns, which is more categorical terms, more video, more creative, more custom images, things like that. And then we're going to break that out into our secondary strategies, which are typically sponsored display, brand defense, conquesting, video, audience. All of these are going to be moved around. Don't get caught up in the core strategies versus secondary strategies. It's really dependent on our brand's goals. But all of this to show you that for one ASIN, we're typically going to have a minimum of 20 to 30 campaigns once we have full scale coverage. And then once those campaigns are launched, we can distribute budget based off our needs, but the foundation's already there. So if I don't need rank, again, I'll pause those campaigns and shift my budget from rank campaigns to profitability campaigns. So that's how we're going to shift things around in that scenario. The whole summation of this is so that way if I'm on a call or if you're a brand owner, we can specifically make strategic adjustments immediately. We can say, hey, product A lost organic sales. Can we shift budgets to rank campaigns? Done within 2 minutes on the call. Or, hey, we have a TikTok campaign running for product B, which means we're going to have a ton of people coming to Amazon and searching for our brand. Can we improve our budget on branded coverage? Yep. Done. Sales are trending down in this whole category. How can we improve top of page coverage for our hero ASINs? Done. Immediately. All the research is done. We can automate and optimize the budget on the fly. So that's kind of the real in-depth coverage we have there. Now, again, one thing I'll follow up with is if you need more context on any of these strategies, check that handout resource. We talk about all of the specifics, ranking campaigns, how we shift budgets around. We have a lot of different content to cover that topic. Now, one question I get, this comes up all the time on LinkedIn, is why do we run one ASIN per campaign? Aren't you just competing for similar inventory? Well, here's an example of why we do it. So we want to have control of every placement possible. So as you can see here, when someone types in Hyperice, we're winning the headline search ad. We have the 3 top products that we want to showcase. We're also winning every single sponsored product placement. Now, if you have variations, this is going to be a little bit different. We don't recommend doing this because it doesn't really make sense. We just recommend running whatever drives the highest click-through rate, because once a customer is in your listing, they know how to navigate variations. And we also recommend, if you're worried about competition, that's fine. You're not going to drive up each other's bids, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you don't want one of your ASINs to be showing in the top of search, you just pause out the campaign. So as needed, we can win every single placement possible. But again, if we're focused on profitability, all we have to do is pause out that campaign. But the core of it is when we want to win all placements and dominate market share, we can. That's why we focus on one ASIN per campaign. Here's a little bit of a view of some of the custom reporting we provide with this strategy. So one of the things that we like to do is build things out specifically how our brands want to see them. When you're relying on a software, you typically don't get as much flexibility because the software has to be built in a way that scales for everyone. When you're running a naming strategy like this, though, it allows you to build out your reporting in any way that you may need. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see that we have all of our strategies broken out: auto, Nexus, rank, and brand. And Nexus is just our internal naming for profitability keyword research campaigns. In the top right-hand corner, you can see that we can break everything out by branded versus non-branded because of our strategy. Or we can allocate completely on the budget level. We can then build out portfolios, which are going to help us build out budget pacing as well. So all of this is provided when you have good campaign naming. You can build out anything that you would ever want to see when you have appropriate naming within your campaigns. And also, it allows you to build up better automations within bulk uploads. So this is our next poll. Out of curiosity, who all uses bulk uploads? It is now posted in the top right-hand corner. We have quite a few masters, which amazes me. Oh, I personally have never successfully uploaded a bulk file, which is interesting and says a lot. So we have a few somewhats. A few know, but I would love to learn. That's actually a segment we're wanting to build out in terms of training. So why bulk uploads are fantastic is because they allow you to make mass changes within the account. We've actually helped advise some of the direction that bulk uploads is going, and I think it is going to be a lot easier in the future. But when you have clean naming, bulk uploads becomes really, really efficient. As an agency, in full transparency, we managed up until I think like $40 million in spend through bulk alone. At the time, I think we were achieving higher than a $4 ROAS just by relying on bulk uploads for consistent bid management, automations, campaign launches, and campaign naming. So it is a really, really powerful tool for anyone who's wanting to build out their own internal management. Here's kind of a quick example for one of the brands that we took over. They had over 20,000 ASINs. They were in the apparel category, so a lot of them were size variations. We were able to fully rename their catalog, set up all of their reporting and categorization in a way that scaled through bulk. So as you can see, over 60,000 rows processed through bulk immediately because we had a good naming and a good system for taking a messy account and cleaning it up in an organized fashion. So highly recommend, if your long-term goal is to build out an internal Amazon advertising team, learn bulk uploads. It's a great way to master and make PPC a lot more scalable. All right, so the next section we're going to be diving into is research. This is probably like one of the most exciting sections when it comes to Amazon advertising. Optimization's fine and dandy, but I prefer diving into the research section. We're going to talk about ad types, match types, keyword research, and product research. Now, before we dive into that, there's one really important concept to remember, and that your advertising performance is only as good as your bid management. What I mean by that is when you see different ad type data or different match type data, it's really dependent on the optimization strategy being ran. So if anyone comes to you and says, hey, sponsor brands is terrible, never use it, question their optimization strategy, not the performance of that campaign. We're going to talk about some specifics there, but just keep that in mind. So diving into ad types. Within Amazon advertising, there's three main ad types: sponsor products, sponsor brands, sponsor display. You also have DSP rolled into that. And across all three of those, it's getting a lot more complex into what the targeting looks like. So one thing I will note is this is what a typical search looks like. If you type in mouthwash, the first thing you see is the sponsor brand ad and 2 to 3 sponsored product ads. Ad types do not compete for real estate. Sponsored display, sponsored DSP, or sponsored display and DSP have a little bit crossover, but it's not a ton. So if you hear anyone say, don't run both ad types, they're going to compete, that's not quite true. It allows you to win multiple placement on the page, which does something subconsciously for a consumer. So if I go to Amazon and I'm looking for a mouthwash and all I see is 6 different variations of mouthwash, that's going to do something to my subconscious. Think about it like Coke and the billboard ads they run and things like that. Now, a lot of people don't love that excuse for running multiple ads, but we now have a lot of data to support it. So let's layer in sponsor brands video, which you now see on the product detail page. You also have sponsored display ads on the product detail page. Well, we have seen some incredible data through AMC, which is Amazon's new technology rollout, that allows us to layer in all of those audiences and figure out how all of them work together. Now, here's some cool examples pulled out from PackView where you can see, hey, when you run DSP and sponsor brands together, you have a 1.65% conversion rate. But when you run DSP, sponsor display, and sponsor brands, that jumps up to 70%. Now, again, this is isolated. This isn't full account data, so don't take this and run with it. But this is the insights that Amazon's now providing us to make better decisions with how we're spending our money. Basically, they're showing us that when we layer in multiple ad types, it increases your conversion rate likelihood. It increases your new to brand conversion rate, and it shows us path to purchase data. Now, I'm going to save this deep dive for a more advanced webinar, but all of it to set the foundation for when you're scaling on Amazon, you need to be running multiple ad types. They do not compete directly. If anything, they subconsciously drive higher awareness and higher conversion, as seen here. Here's our own personal data as an agency. For anyone who's curious on this, you can see that when someone is exposed to both sponsored display and sponsored products, we see a really large jump in purchase rate. So from 0.4% to almost 0.9%. So again, if your sponsored display on its own isn't working appropriately, it might be worth looking into your AMC data to see if it's actually supporting your sponsored products in a way that drives overall conversion rate increases, as well as unique reach increases, but that's more of an awareness play. Let's go back to search. We can see we have absolutely saturated sponsor brands, sponsored product ads. Listerine is everywhere, probably planning on buying it. What does that performance differentiation look like? Well, at the end of the day, almost all of our ad types historically do convert in similar fashions and optimize in similar fashions. So you can take a look here. You can see sponsored products is our most profitable during this period of time. Sponsored display is a little bit higher of an ACOS, but if optimized appropriately, everything should almost be in line with each other. Now, there's a few different variables that are going to skew that performance, which we're going to talk about. Well, one, let's talk about sponsored brands. So you can see for this account in January alone of last year, sponsored brands drove an additional $780,000 in sales. That is a great case study for the power of sponsored brands. It's typically only 18 to 20% of total advertising sales. There is a few factors that influences sponsor brands performance. One of them is it is more pay to play. You have a lot of enterprise brands that are joining the sponsor brands bandwagon and driving up CPCs. And when everyone's fighting over that number one placement on the page, you can see it get really expensive really fast. Same thing for sponsor brands video. It's one of my favorite ad types. It drives so much value outside of just profitability, but it is becoming pay to play. So keep that in mind. On the flip side, we have sponsored display. Here's an amazing use case for sponsored display where you can see as a whole, it's driven an additional $186,000 in sales at a almost $6 ROAS. Sponsored display can be incredibly powerful, and not just on the remarketing side. Sponsored display can allow you to segment out products and target them directly so you show up on all of your competitors' product detail pages. So if you have a competitive advantage, whether through color or price point or something like that, sponsored display can be amazing. Now, I want to kind of reiterate here, we're not doing super deep dives on setting up sponsor brands for scale or sponsored displays for scale, but in the handout section, I know we have videos on the exact strategies we run. For sponsored display, we typically look at competitor targeting when we have a competitive advantage. We typically look at cross-selling and upselling and brand defense. We do move into category targeting when we're ready for a more awareness play. And then we also layer in all remarketing things. That's a huge call out with sponsored display is the ability to remarket your audience. One thing I will note is if you're seeing inflated results from your View CPM campaigns, it's not because View CPM is a superpower ad type. It's actually because a View CPM campaign means that if a customer sees your ad for 1 second and then purchases, your sponsored display ad is being attributed for that sell. Now, typically in all of our other Amazon advertising search ad types, a customer has to click on the ad for the ad to get that attribution. For sponsored display View CPM, all they have to do is view it. So it causes inflated results that aren't necessarily accurate. So again, all they have to do, like think about you as a shopper, you're scrolling through Amazon and you quickly view an ad, but you're not interested. So you don't click on it and you scroll down, but then you end up buying that product. That ad is still getting accredited for the purchase without the customer ever clicking. So this is a really small one-off scenario. But again, if you're running View CPM and you're spending the majority of your budget because it looks absolutely amazing, it's not that amazing of an ad type. It's just on a different attribution model. So keep that in mind. Here's a quick call out on just what I love about every single ad type. Sponsored products are maximum visibility. In almost every single account we run across our $75 million worth of spend, the majority of sales are going to sponsored products. Because sponsored products has the most advertising real estate on the page, and customers are more likely to click on that advertising real estate because they don't realize it's an ad. A big mistake we see on enterprise brands is being over leveraged on sponsored brands because they get caught up in the sponsored brand aspect of that ad type and they think it's for brand awareness and it's not. So highly recommend maxing out your sponsored products presence before doing anything else. Now that leads us to sponsored brands, which is one of my favorite advertising types. You should be taking every single keyword that's successful in sponsored products and rolling it out to sponsored brands. The beauty of sponsored brands is you can advertise 3 products or more for the price of 1 click. It's one of the highest click-through rate ad types, especially when you layer in a lifestyle custom image. And it's the best real estate on the page. It is a billboard for every single person shopping in your category. So highly recommend maxing out your sponsored brands. Every brand should be running sponsored brands regardless of whether or not you have a brand. It is a extremely beneficial ad type. Sponsor brands video, absolutely amazing. The ability to convince a customer to convert through design and your video creative makes it super powerful. Again, it is becoming a lot more pay to play because everyone's fighting over that one placement. Sponsored display and DSP, I'm putting into one bucket. I could do a whole webinar on these ad types alone, and we actually did give a webinar on this. So if you're interested in checking our DSP webinar, go take a look at that. Both of these ad types are going to influence the future for a lot of brands. Amazon's investing a lot into expanding their display network because they need a way to diversify ad cost and increase the audience that you're able to target. So when we're able to serve Amazon ads off platform and follow a customer around throughout their shopper journey, that is insanely powerful. So highly recommend investing in both of these once you get familiar with the power of these two ad types. So now we're going to dive into match types. Now, the reason I have this graphic is because the best thing I can recommend with match types is to test. We have seen really varying results across categories and brands, and there's really not a one size fits all solution. Here's an example I want to show you. So this is an exact match campaign focusing on one keyword. This is a ranking campaign, so please don't judge our ROAS. Our whole goal for this campaign was to improve organic rank. But as you can see, I have a $9 CPC. A $9 CPC is going to cause me to have a really terrible ACOS and a really bad ROAS, as you can see here. But that doesn't mean exact match is terrible. So if I went to LinkedIn and I posted, nobody should run exact match again, it's got the worst ROAS, the worst ACOS, that would be a lie. Well, in this use case, it looks okay. But again, it's all in my bid management. So the reason we're bidding so high is because we have a 34% advertising conversion rate. So that is fantastic. That is an incredibly strong advertising conversion rate. I think most average between 10 and 20%. We identified an opportunity in this space to win market share and increase rank. So that is why I have made the strategic decision to bid higher on my exact match keywords, which is thus going to inflate all of my data. So one thing to note, when you're seeing, again, all the CPC data by all the different agencies, keep in mind that's really dependent on how much they are spending on certain keywords. Exact match isn't bad. My bidding strategy is what's making this campaign look bad. To answer one of the questions in the chat, why do we have a $5 budget here? Perfect example of our first phase one of this webinar. We have a $5 budget because we achieved our organic rank improvement. We actually improved our organic rank from number 8 for our top keyword to number 3. So now I can pause this campaign and or lower my daily budget for this campaign because I have achieved my organic rank goals. So now I want to shift that budget to my profitability focused campaigns to bring up my ROAS, lower my ACOS, and focus on longevity rather than organic rank strategy. That being said, here's some amazing data we pulled from one of our accounts. This is one of my favorite viewpoints to look at. This is why we run multiple match types. This is why we run a lot of long tail keyword research strategies, because the more you can expand your targeting, typically the more profitability you're going to drive. So as you can see here, all of our keywords that had one term had a $4 CPC and a 55% ACOS and a, not fantastic click-through rate. Think about it like this. This is in the supplement space. One word was vitamins. If a customer is typing in vitamins, they don't really know if they want a multivitamin or vitamin C or vitamin D, right? So it's a lot more of a broad strategy. Now, when we go down to my long tail keywords, which have 5 different routes, think multivitamin for children and men, or multivitamin for men, vitamin D. You can see that we're getting a lot more precise. The customer knows exactly what they're looking for. So when they see my specific product, they're going to be much more likely to convert. So you're going to see a much higher conversion rate, typically a much lower CPC because all your competitors aren't thinking on bidding on that. And you're going to drive a lot more profitability. So again, when we're looking at budget distribution, this is what we're balancing. We're balancing the category terms that are going to give us, 49 million to 88 million impressions, but with a poor ACOS, with these more profitable long tail terms that are going to drive a lot less impressions, but a lot more profitability. And the reason this ties into match type is because, as you've seen, we run auto campaigns and we also run in broad phrase, and exact. And by running in broad phrase and autos, we're able to do evergreen keyword research. So that means every, 2 to 4 weeks, we can scrape our search term report, find everything new and profitable, and create new campaigns for it. That's going to drive more incrementality long term. A good example of why this matters is, let's go back to mouthwash. If I'm bidding on mouthwash exact, this is exactly what I'm going to get, right? But if I'm bidding on mouthwash in broad, I may show up for mouthwash for children. And I may find out that I have a niche opportunity to serve my ad for children-related products and drive more profitability. Now, in this case, mouthwash for children is probably not fantastic. As you can see here, the products showcased are branded for children as well, which means we're not going to do as well, which is why, again, bid optimization is the most important aspect. I typically run my broad and phrase campaigns at lower bids, knowing that I'm going to show up for all kinds of different placements that may not be the best fit. So I run in a lower bid. So even though my conversion rate's a little bit lower, they're still going to be as profitable as my exact match campaigns potentially. So again, run in all match types. One thing I am surprised I haven't seen being asked in the comments is if I run a bucketing strategy or a waterfall strategy where we move all kinds of keywords around, autos, broad phrase, exact. We do not do that. We find that it actually does not do that well because you cannot replicate results across match types or ad types. If a keyword did really well on page 3 in a broad campaign because it has a low bid, and then we move it to a new campaign, an exact match with a higher bid, and we're showing up on page 1 right now, our conversion rate is going to be a lot different. So it's probably not going to perform as well in an exact match, hypothetically. So we like to say, hey, if it's doing well in this match type, keep it in that match type. We can still test it in exact match where I have direct control, but keep them running in both. They're not going to compete. Whatever is the highest bid, highest relevancy, and highest budget is going to get the majority of your spend first. So if we go back to our ranking campaign strategy, I allocate a certain percent of my budget to ranking campaigns, but when I'm out of budget or I pause that campaign, my spend is just going to start flowing to my profitable term. So I can bid on mouthwash at $10, but when that's out of budget, because I can't afford it 100% of the time, I can still bid on mouthwash at a $3 bid and win more profitability that way. So that's how we really focus on, driving that incrementality long term. A good question I'm going to go ahead and mention now is, do we negative match competitor terms? Example, if I'm targeting, again, Listerine is the product I'm selling, would I negative exact match Act mouthwash for children? Not typically. Because again, I can just lower my bid. Bid management is the fundamental lever that we can pull. So if I lower my bid enough, even if I get 100 clicks in one order, that can still be profitable for me if I have a 10-cent bid, right? Because 100 clicks at 10 cents still drive profitability on a $23 product, maybe not a $4 product, but that's why we focus on bid management first. Now, the one time we do recommend negating is if you're only focused on profitability, nothing else, then we'll potentially consider negating keywords. Or if you are selling a term that can be a little bit confusing. So if I'm selling an iPhone case or iPhone charger, I would go ahead and negate Android charger because maybe a customer can't tell the difference aesthetically and they're still clicking. And then when they realize it's the wrong model, they exit out. That's an opportunity to negate. At the end of the day, though, bid management is 100% like our main priority. If you're only focused on profitability, though, exact match and lower bids is going to be typically the winning combination. I think that covers the basics. We're going to dive into bid management a little bit, so I'll hold off on some of my rants on bid management. All right, again, downloadable resource where we cover a lot more in-depth keyword research techniques. Keyword research is the one area where I felt bad that I didn't go into more detail, but keyword research takes a lot of time to walk through and demo. And at the end of the day, it's not the most important aspect at Amazon advertising because as long as you had good bid management, your keyword research can be a little bit more broad. Because again, if someone's clicking on your ad, they're interested in your product. So why would you negate that keyword per se, right? There was interest, they clicked. If they did not convert, that's due to your listing. So keep that in mind. All right. So the next section we're going to be talking about is optimization. So we're going to dive into bid management, the targeting tab, budget distribution, and tacos improvement. A little bit of tacos improvement. Don't get too excited, you all. But before diving into that, if anyone takes anything away from this webinar, this is one of the most important aspects to take notes on. and that is brand metrics, not brand analytics, not search query performance report, but brand metrics. So for those of you all who have not seen the new UI rollout with an advertising console, shoot me a message and I can help with this. But you are going to look in advertising console and you're going to see this tiny orange arrow that is either going to say brand metrics or insights and planning. And you are going to click on that. Once you click on that, you're going to click on brand metrics, and then you're going to be shown every single category associated with your brand. Now you're going to click on the category you're most interested in seeing this data for. So I did vitamins for this sake. And what you're going to be shown is actual conversion rate data. Now, this is one of the most powerful insights I've seen in all Amazon advertising so far. So again, take notes on this. What is so powerful about this is this data is advertising and organic. It is clearly stated in the brand metrics tab that this is combined data. This is not third-party data. This is not Helium 10. This is not Zon tools. This is not whatever tool you use. This is directly from Amazon, and it's showing you on the category level how your brand compares to the category. So as you can see here in the top slideshow or screenshot, our conversion rate is 41% for the month of March. Category average is 28%. Category top is 53%. Why this data is so powerful is because now I can decide whether or not I should drive traffic to my listing. Because if we look at the bottom screenshot where you can see we have a 9% conversion rate and category average is 12%, we know that we have some listing optimization that needs done before we start driving traffic and paying to acquire customers. Because when customers are landing on our product detail page, they're not buying for some reason. They're not converting. For some reason, customers are clicking onto our listing and saying, see you later. So a lot of times when we're auditing accounts, this is one of the first things that we look at. Do you have an advertising problem or do you have a listing problem? And this tells us that. Now, a few things to note. I do, again, have a specific walkthrough on brand metrics where we look at things like how you can zero in on your category and get a little bit more specific. We talk about how you can niche down and look at your detailed page views or your branded search metrics. And that is a full walkthrough. Again, this is my absolute favorite advertising viewpoint. So highly recommend everyone take a look. A lot of brand owners are really close to their products and they assume that they're converting a lot better than category. And then we look at this data and we're like, okay, we have some improvements to be made. Now, a few call outs. One, price point obviously affects your conversion rate. If you're a premium product, you're probably gonna have a lower conversion rate. So don't be concerned. That just means you potentially have more margin on the back end. And, or if you're in apparel, we also see a lot lower conversion rates than what you're gonna see here. So don't be thrown by this. But again, why this is so powerful is this is actual conversion rate data in your category. So if you see, all the software companies posting an average of 12%, just pull this and you'll know exactly what you have. And then again, there's a lot more data in this viewpoint that you all can dive into, but I'll save that for some other time. All right. So now that we know that we have a product that is potentially ready to be advertised, we know we have a fantastic conversion rate, we can start talking on the bid management segment of this. So I posted another poll. What do you all use for bid management? Do you optimize by hand? Do you rely on a third-party software? Are you using bulk uploads or do you just not touch bid management at all? A lot of people optimizing by hand. That is the method I'm most used to, for being fully honest. I've also consulted or audited a lot of softwares in the space, so I can speak to that. If anyone's looking to outsource to a software, again, put it in the comments, put your questions there. I can definitely help. While 11 people use bulk uploads. I'm going to take a guess that those are agency people. This is great. All right. So as you all have probably gathered up until this point, bid management is probably the things I'll speak out the most on, in that it's just important to have a foundation for. Now, 90% of your softwares and 90% of your agencies are using very similar formulas. If anyone in here is using AI and they want to fight me on that, you can fight me on that. But the majority of bid management rules are very similar. So we're going to talk about what some of those look like. I also have a video on the rules that I personally use to when I was managing more singular accounts, I would do bid management by hand, and I have a video on what that looked like. But let's kick off on actual bid management strategies. So let's talk about why bid management is so important first. Let's take this ad right here. This sponsored product ad, it's the top of the page. It's the first placement for one of the highest volume keywords in this category, shampoo. So in order to win that, really all it comes down to is having a relevant product, which you can see here we do, and having the highest bid. Those are the two most important things at the end of the day. I will have 30 people flood my comments saying, hey, I'm bidding high enough. I'm bidding higher than suggested. I'm still not showing up. You're probably not bidding high enough. A really quick way to test this is to set a $50 bid or a $40 bid, and then within 2 minutes, open up an incognito browser, and typically you're going to see your ad there 90% of the time. If it's not a relevant product or it's a brand new product that isn't indexed for that keyword, you're not going to show up as often. But if it's a relevant product, the number one inventory on the page almost always comes down to bid. I can guarantee you people are paying a lot more for this than you'd ever expect. I would assume, in full transparency, this placement's probably costing them around $5 to $15. So that's pretty crazy. So let's pull some fake data and say that this number one placement on the page cost us $5 a click. So we can see at a $5 CPC, let's assume we have a 35% conversion rate. That's probably where Pantene's at. Let's say that they've gotten 100 clicks. That's a good test, right? 100 clicks worth of data. They have a 35% conversion rate, which means that they drove around $629 worth of sales. And if I'm talking too fast, feel free to screenshot this segment so you can kind of do some mental math here. Conversion rate is, 35%, which means out of 100 clicks, 35 people ordered. And at a $17, $18 price point, that means 629 sales were driven. So the whole purpose of this at $5, that means our ROAS was $1.25, which means our ACOS is probably around 90%. Now, let's say we tested lowering our bid. When you lower your bid, you cannot afford the highest traffic real estate on the page. So what happens when you lower your bid is you start showing up on the product detail page under the carousel, and you start showing up on page 2 or page 3 or page 4. So at the core of bid management, what your bid influences is where on the page you're showing up. You bid high, you get the top placements on the page. You bid low, you get these low traffic placements on the page. Now they're not completely zero traffic. A lot of customers will scroll a product detail page and they're going to scroll this carousel. But keep that in mind that as an Amazon advertiser, that's why our job's gotten so much more complicated, because a lot of brands can't win that premium traffic. So we've got to, again, figure out the budget distribution of how much of that top traffic can we win? How much of this lower traffic can we win but drive more profitability? Well, if we take this placement here and assume it cost us $2 and we keep all the data consistent, 35% conversion rate, we do a test of 100 clicks again, you can see that by only changing the bid, we now have a $3.14 ROAS. So almost triple the ROAS and a much better ACOS, all from bid management. Because bid management, again, is the most important lever that we can pull as an advertiser. So let's look at those side by side, and you can directly see how these are competing. $5 bid, same conversion rate, has a cost per acquisition of $14 and an 80% ACOS. $2 bid, you can see we have a much higher ROAS, much lower ACOS. Now I'm going to call out someone who commented saying product pages have very low conversion as compared to top of search. It's not always true. If you have a lower price point, you're going to do much better on a product detail page. Now, a lower price point does still do well at top of search, of course, because it's a price comparison. But if you have a lower price point, you typically can't compete at top of search because of this reason right here. You can't afford the traffic. Higher price points typically do really well at the top of the page because a customer's not window shopping. They're seeing that price point and they're clicking immediately and they're buying. If you're a customer and you are window shopping, then you're typically going to page 2, you're looking at all the competitors, you're really concerned with price consciousness, right? So you're going to look for other ads in other places. So that's a little bit of the customer, I guess, subconscious that comes into play here. Another thing to note is you're not going to have perfect conversion rates across the board. So this isn't a great test at scale. I realize I always get this argument, but the whole point of this is to show how much your bid matters. So do you want to win the highest traffic placement, or do you want to win a low traffic placement that drives high profitability? Again, it doesn't have to be one or the other. That's why we set up our campaigns in the way that we do, is so we can move our budgets. Maybe 20% of our budget is going to go to shampoo because it's going to drive the majority of our sales and our rank improvements. And then 30% of our budget is going to go to product detail pages or profitability or anything else beyond that. But at the end of the day, the most important variable is the bid. So one thing I always have brands come to me and say is, I want to improve my ACOS. Okay. Well, in order to do that, we need to lower your bid. So we go on lower bids, which means their impressions typically decreases because less people are shopping on page 2 or 3. And then their total sales drop. And they're like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted. I want to drive more sales. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to have to increase our bid. And what happens when we increase our bid is we're typically going to see a drop in ROAS and an increase in ACOS. So that's why we have to balance both of those really strategically, because it's not as easy as it used to be. 6 years ago, all CPCs were super cheap. You won number one inventory at a 70-cent bid, right? So it was a lot easier back then. Nowadays, we really have to be strategic. Now, shampoo may be expensive, but that is some of the best advertising real estate on the page. So that's why we choose to play in that space, because we know we're going to have a high lifetime value. People are going to continue to repeat purchase, and it's also going to drive organic rank improvements. So someone asked this earlier, hey, what's our organic rank strategy? Well, what we do is we focus on what's the highest volume we can drive for our top converting keywords. Now, I'm not going to go much deeper than that because right now is not the webinar to do that. But at the end of the day, where do you drive the most volume? At the top of the page. PackView has released some data that 70% of click share goes to the first 3 placements on page 1. So if we go back 5 to 6 years ago, when everyone was doing giveaways and search five buys and everything that's against the rules, the reason they were doing that is because they wanted to drive high amounts of traffic to the keywords that they converted best on. Just mimic that with your PPC strategy. Figure out what keywords you convert the absolute best on and drive high amounts of traffic to those keywords. Now, again, I'm not giving a lot of in-depth details on setup and structure because we are already at an hour, but I do have a handout that covers this specific rank strategy, so feel free to check that out. All right, this did not download fantastic. I don't love whatever this is aesthetically going on here, but the only other thing I wanted to layer in with bid management, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is you can have really good bid management and have bad keywords and still do well. On the flip side, you can have amazing keywords with bad bid management. And that's what we're showcasing here. So you can see this keyword has a 35% conversion rate. That is a fantastic keyword by all terms, but the ACOS looks terrible. Why? Because we're bidding $21 on it. So if you have someone auditing your account and coming in and pausing your keywords that have a bad ACOS, stop that immediately. Do not judge the success of your keywords based on ACOS for this reason alone. This keyword is one of our top most important keywords, yet the ACOS looks bad because we have a high bid. On the flip side, here's the inverse of that. We have an audience targeting campaign that's super broad, terrible conversion rate, 1.7%. That means, you can see here, out of 1,100 clicks, only 20 people ordered. That is terrible. A lot of people land on this page and do not buy this product. But we have such good bid management. We have a 16-cent bid that it's still within our ACOS targets. So this brand was shooting for a 35% ACOS. This is within target. So this is why I always recommend have fundamental good bid management, and then your keyword research can be a little bit more broad. Now, the follow-up question I almost always get in the chat when I show this typical screenshot is, why wouldn't you just pause it? Or why wouldn't you negate it? Or is that not hurting your organic rank? Well, let's talk about that. At a 16-cent bid, I'm not getting a lot of impressions. As you can see here, this has been decreased greatly. So it's almost the same as pausing the keyword, because once I start getting into 5-cent bids, it's pretty much going to pause the keyword. So it's almost the exact same thing, but it keeps the window open for a profitability opportunity. Now, if you are shooting for a 10% ACOS and you don't value the pay-per-click model and driving awareness, don't run this. Go ahead and pause it. But again, if you're driving for scale, then the more people you can bring into your funnel, the better, the more awareness you can drive. So again, bid management, make sure it's in place. It's a really important part of your Amazon advertising strategy, because good bid management allows every match type to be successful, every ad type to be successful. And that's what's the core of all of our Amazon advertising fundamentals. All right. Anyone have any questions around that section before we hop into the targeting tab, which is my second favorite rollout in Advertising Console? I do have a formula to determine bid based on target ACOS. It's in the handout sheet, bid management. It should be clearly labeled. If not, go to the Better AMS YouTube channel. It's one of the most viewed videos. It's 15-minute bid optimization. And someone in the comments also provided a great formula that's even more efficient than mine. Ooh, this is a great call out. How many clicks do you want to see in order to kill the keyword? All right, let's go back to this right here. We have 1,100 clicks in 20 orders, and I did not kill the keyword because it's profitable. So I hate when people say 10 clicks, pause, 100 clicks, pause, because it also depends on your price point. If you have $1,000 product, you can drive hundreds of clicks before you ever get a sell. But if you have a $10 product, you can only drive like 5 clicks. So if I'm giving a general statement, 1, it should be really dependent on your price point. 2, it should be really dependent on your bid. Because again, a 10-cent bid and 100 clicks is really low spend, but 100 clicks at a $2 bid is $200 worth of spend. So understand that fluctuation and don't have hard set rules for that reason. Okay, let's talk about the targeting tab. So the targeting tab is one of my absolute favorite rollouts in Amazon advertising. I'm going to show you what it looks like in Ad Console and how we use it to do things at scale. One thing that's important to note is at Better AMS, we really focus a lot on the 80-20 principle, in that, 20% of your optimizations or your keywords or anything you do is going to drive 80% of your value. So we really like to focus on efficiencies. And 2, I spend 70% of my time in general training and educating. So I try to break things down in a simple way that makes sense for you all. So we have a little bit more complexity in our formulas and our rules, but as a brand owner or as a advertising manager, the targeting tab allows for really, really efficient optimization. So keep that in mind. All right. So again, left-hand corner of your advertising console, you're going to see a tab called targeting. You're going to click that. It's going to take a while to load. You're then going to click this tiny little column here that says columns. And when you open that up, it's going to allow you to add conversion rate, which is one of the most needed metrics in everything that we do in Amazon advertising. So add that column real quick. I also like to see CPC, spend, sales, ROAS, or ACOS, depending on your preference. I don't necessarily look at click-through rate or impressions too much because they vary too much based off bid and targeting. So once I add those columns, I then like to look at my preferred date range. If you're wanting to quickly audit your brand right now, look at last 30 days and then filter top down by spend. In my opinion, that's the first thing I look at, is what is driving the most of my spend. Where is my spend going to? Now, for all the brand owners relying on a software or an agency, this is the viewpoint that's going to allow you to know whether or not your Amazon advertising is working towards your goals. So what I mean by that is you're going to open up this tab and it's going to show you all of your sponsored product targets. So every single keyword, every product target in one viewpoint, those are going to be right here. And it's going to allow you to see where your spend is going with those targets and your conversion rate, which is super powerful. So if I'm quickly auditing this brand, I know it's a pain not being able to see the keywords. One thing that stands out is this is one of my lowest converting targets. And yet I've spent $16,000 on it to date. So that's kind of raises a yellow flag for me. And then I can also see I'm bidding $17 on this term. So those two metrics stand out for me. So I should probably lower my bid until I improve my conversion rate, right? Or if I look a little bit deeper, I may realize this is a ranking campaign, which I know it is. So then it's less of a red flag for me because it's still converting better than category average for that term. But if I'm an advertiser or a brand manager, what I'm really looking for here is, do I have auto campaigns at the top of my highest spending targets? That's a yellow flag. And the reason being is we have no control over auto campaigns. They just do whatever they want. They take our budget and spend it however they'd like. So when I'm looking at my targeting tab, what I want to see is my most valuable keywords at the top. All of my spend, or the majority of my spend, is going to my highest value targets. So that's super important to me. I also want to make sure that I don't have any crazy category targeting campaigns or auto campaigns. And even if they're profitable, I don't like the majority of my spend going towards them because they're not necessarily improving my rank. They're not driving overall revenue growth for me. A few other things is, are you targeting the majority of brand terms? So let's say you're Coca-Cola. If I'm spending on Amazon and all my budget's going to branded terms, that's typically a red flag because you're not driving incrementality. You're just playing defense. So take a look at this tab and then also compare your CPC versus your bid. So if we take this example right here and say, hey, I want to push this ROAS up to a $2 to $3, but I see that my CPC is the same as my bid. It's like, okay, we need to lower my bid. We need to bid lower in order to improve ROAS. So that's a decision we would make really quickly. And once you have my formula from our YouTube video, that will help you a ton in that area. So again, if you're relying on third parties or if you're relying on an agency, brand metrics and the targeting tab are the two places I would live in order to make sure my spend is being allocated appropriately and that my brand is even ready to compete with the category. So two really, really quick, high level, efficient viewpoints that allow you to see the direction your brand is trending. So I could probably run an account out of just these two. And I have as a fun experiment. The one thing to note is you don't have sponsor brands viewpoints under the targeting tab. So you'll have to use advertising console to navigate those. So again, where your spend's going, how are your top targets converting? And are they converting better than average? How is your bid management performing? Is your bid lower than your CPC when it needs to be? All right, so tacos. It's the last section that we're going to cover, I believe. This is going to be the shortest section because I actually have a full webinar on this, but I feel like I could not do a webinar without mentioning tacos because it's probably one of the biggest questions I get in the whole space. Also, let me know your favorite tacos in the chat. I love a good breakfast taco, bacon, egg, and cheese, typically. Okay. All right, let's talk about Amazon advertising in relation to tacos. So I'm going to run through this quickly and it's going to be actionable. It's not going to be near as in-depth as it deserves to be, but I did a whole, I think, hour and 10-minute long presentation on this specific topic because there's so much that can be derived from the tacos conversation. The first thing I'll state is if you're wanting to improve your tacos, identify where your sales are coming from. If over 50% of your sales are coming from ads, when you lower your spends, you are going to lower your revenue, which is a fun line to balance, right? As most of you know. So keep that in mind. If the majority of your sales are coming organically, then you do have room to cut back on your spend, which will improve your tacos, right? So keep that in mind. Number two, ask yourself, how are customers finding my listing? Go to Amazon.com, type in your main keyword, look for your product. If you are not on page one, you have an organic ranking problem. And it's a lot less likely that you have an advertising problem, though you definitely still could. So keep that in mind. And three, optimize. So this is what the video really goes into, but a lot of the concept is how we use Amazon advertising to improve organic rank. At the core, we focus on our top converting keywords that we are indexed for and SEO optimized for, and we drive high volume to those keywords. If we drive a ton of volume in a short period of time, our organic rank's going to increase quicker. If we don't, and we don't have the budget for that, we're going to go slow and steady. And we're going to use search query performance reporting to track all of that data. So search query performance allows us to see brand share. So we can actually track brand share on the keyword level. And that's what we're using for organic rank tracking. But I'm not going to dive into that too deep right here because I know I'll probably still get a ton of questions for the last 45 minutes of this Q&A, and I have a webinar on it. So again, check that out. All right. So that is the bulk of this webinar. We are going to open up to a Q&A section right now. If you're interested in us running an audit, check us out, betterams.com. We typically do free audits for all brands that we think are a good fit for us. If you're a little bit too small, then we're going to try to recommend you join the community, because we really want to help sellers grow to the point of being able to outsource. But up until you're to the around $100,000 a month range, it can be marginally pretty difficult to outsource to an agency or to a software company. So keep that in mind. Free audits, join our community, and yeah, let's go. If I missed anything, start asking me questions. We'll go rapid fire. All right. You have 5 child variations in one listing. You only have one hero ASIN in your campaign. If a customer searches for XXL, since your campaign includes ASINs of size large, will you be shown by the customer who usually purchases XXL? Typically, yes. Relevancy is obviously an important role, but it doesn't go as in depth as size variations per se. Now, let's say you take that exact same example, but color variation. Let's say I have a black t-shirt, a white t-shirt, and a red t-shirt all in one listing. That is a scenario where I would potentially build my keyword research around my color variations and create specific campaigns for those reasons, to make sure I have a highly aligned audience for every single child variation. But it's not going to affect relevancy in terms of your ads just not going to show, because you're fully indexed. Your listing is indexed across all of those size variations. What are your thoughts on auto campaigns? I work for a company that owns 30 or so brands, which means 4,000 plus SKUs. So I highly agree. That's auto campaigns are like one of our first launches for this reason. It's super scalable. I love auto campaign recommendations, but when you're managing more strategically, you want to start shifting those search terms over to manual, strictly because of bid management. So for an auto campaign, you have one bid that's applied to every single search term in that campaign, which means if you're, bidding on toothpaste, but also fluoride-free toothpaste for kids, you don't want the same bid for both, because one of them is going to convert a lot better than the other. So ideally, you build out a really strong strategy that helps you scrape your search term report, filter by your auto campaigns, take all of those search terms and continuously put them into manual campaigns. At scale, I would say we typically try to have like 10 to 15% of our budget going towards auto campaigns, but that just means you have the best foundation to really drive incremental sales growth, because you're going to be pulling out all of those strategic terms and giving them their own bid and budget, which means you're going to show up more frequently, drive more sales, and typically drive more profitability when you can control the specific bid behind those auto campaigns. What is my argument for phrase match? It works. That's what I would say. So we test in all 3 match types. And again, all it comes down to is bid management. So yes, you could just run in broad, you could just run in exact, because they're going to do all the same things. But if you have great systems, why not test all 3? There's no argument against phrase match. That's, I guess, my defense. There's no reason not to run it. In some accounts, we see that phrase match is typically the highest combination of sales volume and profitability, because it's not as drastically broad as broad. There's been a lot of complaints about broad match lately because Amazon's opened up the threshold for relevancy. So phrase match typically is the perfect combination between sales volume and expansion and profitability through bid management. Can you share some advantages of using PackView in comparison with other PPC automation tools like Perpetua and TintWise and so on? So I've been pretty outspoken across all of these tools. I've audited most of them, and I'm actually really good friends with the majority of their founders. So again, most softwares are trying to achieve the same thing: give you more efficient automation, and 2, give you different views to help you understand your business better. So keep that in mind when you're ready. That's what software automation is typically for. I'll talk about Perpetua, PackView, and IntentWise, because those are the 3 I'm closest with. Perpetua is fantastic for scalability. If you don't have time to fully manage your Amazon advertising, Perpetua is a great system for scale. It's incredibly efficient. They have one of the best UIs in the space, but it's really black box at times. You typically want to, be aligned with their structure and their optimization strategy. So I know that can definitely play a role. PackView is one of the best when you're really expanding into retail media, when you need share of voice data, when you need to run your Walmart ads and your Instacart ads and your Amazon ads, and when you're starting to look for more AMC insights because you're spending against both search and DSP. Pack view is fantastic. Intent wise, I actually really enjoyed as well. Intent wise is a good combination of both. I feel like they've done a good job of being scalable, but still providing some of like the technical applications that allow you to improve your reporting and view your business in a better way. What is your suggestion for a premium product which happens to be the highest price in the category? Do you suggest to decrease the price? So I'm not the right person to ask about pricing adjustments, if we're being honest. I don't do a lot on that general business side, but what we do on the advertising side is we really look for like the economies of scale aspect. Can we make up for the decrease in profitability through volume and revenue? And where we're really going to see that is if our conversion rate improves from the lower price point to the point that our organic rank also improves a ton. If we go into brand metrics, we can again see those category comparisons. So I could say, hey, in the protein category, I'm driving 100,000 detail page views, but my competitor is driving 200,000. If I lowered my price point and was able to, capture that 200K in additional detail page views, then there's potential opportunity for organic incremental growth, which is going to make up for my decrease in profitability. So that's kind of the number one thing I look at is like, what does the market share look like? What does the conversion rate improvement look like? And what does the profitability, of course, look like at the end of the day? Really short-term suggestions. If you win top of search, even though it's more expensive, we've seen crazy improvements in conversion rates and being the first 4 ads on the page. Because again, if someone clicks that ad and buys, they're probably less price sensitive. They're not scrolling around window shopping and seeing your product against a product that's a lot cheaper. What is the maximum number of keywords you usually use per ad group / campaign? There's a lot of different arguments here around what you can do. We find that single keyword is not very scalable when you have a ton of products or a ton of campaigns. So we don't necessarily recommend that. We typically rely on like our rank campaigns typically have anywhere from 1 to 5 keywords in exact match. Our profitability campaigns typically have between 1 and 20 keywords. The reason being is because I know that the majority of our brands have the budget within that campaign to support it. And what I mean by that is if you have a $10 a day budget and you're trying to advertise 100 keywords, 90% of those keywords are never going to get volume or traffic. So they're not doing you any good, right? You don't have enough budget to support it. So how many keywords you put in a campaign should really depend on what that campaign budget is. If I have a $20,000 a day campaign budget, I can advertise 100 keywords successfully, right? So keep that in mind, but in general, we try to keep less than 20 because again, we want control over where our spend is going and what keywords are getting the majority of the budget. In rank versus profit campaigns, if you use the same keyword and target type, the difference would lie in the budget and bid, right? Yep, 100%. Bid is typically the first lever. Whatever has the highest bid, highest relevancy wins the impression. And then once that campaign's out of budget, your budget starts flowing towards whatever's in budget next and whatever has the next highest bid. When launching a campaign, do you use fixed bids or down only? This is a great comment and could build off into like a ton of different aspects. In general, we run fixed bids because we have our own bid automation, right? I don't want Amazon adjusting my bids and then also having any software coming in and adjusting on top of it. So we almost always rely on fixed bids. If you're focused on profitability and you're not worried about that, then I would do fixed or down only. So that way you don't hit those higher thresholds and you can constantly maintain that volume. On that same note, if we talk about placement modifiers are on the campaign or ad group level. So if you have 20 different keywords and you have a placement modifier, you're now saying that Amazon can increase your bid on all of those keywords, which is really inconsistent because some keyword may do well at top of search, another keyword may not. So I typically don't apply great or aggressive placement modifiers either unless it's a single keyword campaign. So that way I know exactly what keyword I'm influencing the placement for. Which softwares are you using in your agency? This is a great question. I typically try to stay agnostic because I don't think there's a one size fits all solution for everyone. If we're being honest, like I said, there's pros and cons to everyone, but that's a political answer. We use Helium 10. We use PackView for certain brands who need share of voice or multiple marketplaces. But the core of our spend, like over $70 million of our spend, is ran through our own bid management campaign launch software that we built within the API. So that's kind of our core focus because we needed to build customizations for every specific brand. I'm not trying to be a SaaS. So I wanted to be able to say, hey, when this brand comes to me and need this tool, I can build it out specifically for them. So that's kind of our goal. If you have specific questions around what's best for your brand, shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to help give advice on any of the ones that I've seen in the space. What about running your Amazon ads with promotions? So there's a few different things you can consider here. One, maybe your promotion's too steep, so you need to cut back on ads, right? That's something that people typically look at. Another option is if you're running a promotion, how do you get maximum visibility to it? So we set up again like those rank campaigns. We'll also run the same style with like market share focus. So let's say I'm going into Prime Day, I have an amazing discount, which means I'm going to get a fantastic red badge on my listing. We're going to create campaigns focusing solely on top of search because we want everyone who goes into Amazon to see our deal or discount and click into our ad so we can drive maximum volume with that promotion. That's another one. If you want to shoot me a LinkedIn video when I have more voice left, I can send you a more in-depth answer of how we set these up. We'll typically do a Prime Day webinar as well. And I think I have a Prime Day PDF that I can share on all the strategies we run during Prime Day with promotions. So we are launching into new markets. How do you determine a ranking campaign and a profit driving campaign? Wouldn't the ranking focused eventually be evolved into profitable? Yep, 100%. So at the end of the day, what we look for when we're launching into new marketplaces without data is what did we do our keyword research on? What is the SEO we put into our listing? What are the terms that we want to focus on the most? We're going to put those into our ranking campaign and we're going to test it. If I see I'm converting terribly on one of those terms, I'm going to pause it and I'm going to continue focusing on that ranking aspect. Now, again, I may have the exact same keywords in another campaign, but with low bids. That's fine. That's going to be my profitability campaign. This is my rank campaign. My rank campaign is focused on volume and conversion rate. My profitability campaign is not focused on volume. It's focused on ACOS, right? So the KPIs I'm optimizing for are going to be very different on whatever campaign it is. We're also going to optimize bids differently. My ranking campaign is going to stay high bids no matter what the ACOS is, because the only goal is conversion rate and traffic. My profitability campaigns are going to be focused on bid management and budget management, so that way they can improve my ACOS. If you have more than 500 ASINs, would it still make sense to open a campaign for each ASIN? Yes. If you have good systems, which is everything we've talked about today, right? If you figure out bulk management and you can run at scale, have this foundation for every single ASIN, which is going to allow you to figure out what ASINs are working and what ASINs are not. If you have a terrible performance for one of your ASINs, maybe it allows you to identify what's wrong a lot quicker. You don't need to spend on all of them. Some people will say, hey, again, 80-20, only spend on the top of your product line. Yes, I do agree with that to an extent, but also, why are you running 500 ASINs if 30 of them suck, right? It's kind of a push-pull of figuring out why things aren't running well and improving them and fixing them. And PPC is a great place to do that because we get actual search term conversion data. Something we didn't talk about is day parting. Someone alluded to it earlier about how you can't day part by hand. Anyone who's followed me for a while knows I originally was not a big fan of day parting because we didn't have appropriate access to data. Nowadays, we have what's called Amazon Marketing Stream. This has been rolled out for probably 5 to 6 months now, but Amazon Marketing Stream is for brands or teams who have a developer who could pull the data appropriately. And it actually gives us hourly insights to data, which we have never had before. Anyone who 2 years ago said that they were running day party was not running it off of actual data because Amazon does not release appropriate hourly data until now. So Amazon Marketing Stream is a really big value add for anyone who's interested in running that type of optimizations. It's something we're finally working on incorporating into our budget distribution and our bid management models. We run our own software for automations across bid management, budget distribution, and campaign launches. For ranking campaigns, what products do you usually select? What keywords do you choose? How long would it run? Check out my webinar for a lot more in depth. We typically choose the products that are retail ready. They have the highest conversion rate, but they're not in the top 8 and that we want to win more market share on. We then take those products and we pick our top 5 keywords that we want to be ranked on, but we can also afford to rank on. So we're going to figure out what the CPC is and what our conversion rate is. And then we're going to keep running until we improve our organic rank, which we're going to use Search Query Performance Report to verify, as well as, traditional organic rank tracking tools with like BSR and stuff like that. In which time frame are you mostly checking your brand metrics data? So right now we're actually building out a dashboard, which is going to allow us to see week over week data on a graph, which is the most valuable aspect of brand metrics, in my opinion, that they don't give us. I typically look at monthly viewpoint unless I'm running any certain promotions where I need to see week over week changes. As someone asked earlier, if I'm running a deal, I want to also, this is a great question for the price point deal. if I'm running a deal or I have a lower price point, I can use brand metrics to see how vastly my conversion rate changes from that discount. So that's something we would want to look at as well. Do you think Amazon is creating their own display network or an affiliate network off Amazon? 100% to their display network. It's a huge focus of Amazon's to push more media into their display placements and their DSP placements. It's something that we are definitely trying to capitalize on for our brands so we can start getting more insights and learnings before it gets super powerful and popular. I also think that they're doing a lot on the influencer and affiliate side. So Amazon Inspire has been rolled out to a lot of people's Amazon accounts. And basically it's the ability to combine TikTok style videos with the search potential of Amazon. So that's going to be exciting. Definitely focus on UGC. Braden said, tough to do day parting with ad sale attribution window though, still, even with marketing stream. Yes and no. Ideally, you're going to have a look back window that's wide enough where you're not worried about attribution. You're going to go past the 14 to 30 day windows. I may be wrong in this. Dustin will have to confirm it for me, but the sale is attributed to the click time. So that's how you can see, like, if someone clicks at midnight and then purchases at 10 p.m. the next day. Right now, Ad Console doesn't show you that. But with Amazon Marketing Stream, you can see that sale was attributed to the click time. So we're optimizing based on when we get the clicks, which we've never had before. So yes and no. If you're looking at a short time period, Amazon Marketing Stream and attribution is not going to be great. But if you're looking at the appropriate time frame, you are going to be good. If you have any other questions, throw them in the chat. I'll try to get to them quickly. I can answer everything on social after this. But yeah, we are super excited to connect directly with our audience and to really build a powerful community that I would like to see turn into a mastermind of just experts. So thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for sharing. Again, the likes, the commenting, everything makes it all worth it for us. So really excited for everyone here.